The Israeli paper Haaretz noted that CNN issued a report saying that Hamas has rebuilt its strength. Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. On the program today, we'll consider the warfare in Gaza, also Israel's network of torture camps, the British fascist riots and the anti-fascist demonstrations, Elon Musk's Twitter company and how it fed the British fascist riots, and more about Venezuela. I'll start with talk about the military struggle in Gaza. Believe it or not, we don't hear much about the actual fighting between the IDF and Hamas forces. Obviously, the big story is Israeli massacres and starvation of the Palestinians, but there is a military conflict, and on the part of Palestinians, it's surprisingly effective and lethal. Here's a rare story in the New York Times about how Hamas fights the IDF from its miles of deep tunnels. Hamas, for morale or propaganda purposes, puts out videos which shows their fighters in action. They evidently think it important to have a video man attached to fighting groups in action. We'll show 3 photos from one of their videos from a couple weeks ago, as it was shown and analyzed on the Electronic Intifada site. This first one is of a Hamas sniper. In the videos, they show the target framed by a blinking red arrow and then the explosion. In this still from a video, an Israeli Merkava tank is shown in red along with a blinking red arrow. And after it's fired upon, you see the damage from something exploding. The number of Israeli soldiers who have been killed since October 8th is said to be less than 200, but there's many who have been injured. The number last December was 5,000 injured, 2,000 of whom became disabled. That figure for the number of injured was updated in April, and now it's 7,000 injured. You recall at the beginning of this year, Netanyahu said Hamas had 4 battalions left, stationed in Rafah, and when his troops went into Rafah and destroyed these battalions, the war would be over. Netanyahu claimed it could be done in a matter of weeks. But here it is many months later, and no such destruction has taken place. The Israeli paper Haaretz noted that CNN issued a report saying that Hamas has rebuilt its strength. Here's the headline of the August CNN report. The report states that only 3 of 24 Hamas battalions are now considered ineffective. We'll link to the article, to the CNN article in our Palestine Israel archive. Haaretz also noted that the vaunted Israeli project they dubbed Atlantis to flood Hamas tunnels has, after great expense, been abandoned. In part, all the fighters had to do was make some of the tunnel entrances rise uphill. There's also the Israelis shooting their own in so-called friendly fire incidents. A report by NPR in January said 1/5 of Israeli fatalities were caused by these mistakes. It said, quote, "Experts say it's one of the highest such percentages in recent military history." One reason is the tendency for Israel's army to turn areas into free fire zones, shooting at anything and everything. Not mentioned in the NPR report is the IDF soldiers killed via the Hannibal procedure. This is when IDF soldiers shoot their own so they won't be captured, and then the politicians would be forced to bargain for their release. About a month ago, procedures saying what activists stated even in October, that Netanyahu would rather have Israeli troops killed than captured. It's a tactic worthy of Putin or Genghis Khan. It must be great for soldier morale. Last week we talked about the hundreds of Israeli fascists who invaded Israeli military bases, angry because IDF officers had arrested soldiers who had allegedly raped a Palestinian prisoner. We showed a Likud member of parliament defending the rape. David Sheen, who is an Israeli freelance journalist, reports the public is upset. Upset at the attempt to punish any crime against a Palestinian. There's a CCTV video of the soldier suspect doing their assault masked by shields. On this show, on Israeli TV, a speaker calls for the person who gave out the video to be arrested for treason. Here are protests in front of the military prosecutor's office. The crowd yells, Am Israeli Chai, literally, Israel lives. Sheen remarks that the slogan has changed from a right to riot chant to a pro-rape chant. The Israeli human rights group B'Tselem has published a major new report documenting how the Israeli prison system has become what B'Tselem calls a network of torture camps.
There is no safe place here in the Gaza Strip. Everyone is targeted without exception. There is nothing left.
The man who has sacrificed the hostages to die in Gaza, despite a deal on the table, will exploit the family's pain and suffering to legitimize himself and his criminal and corrupt and fanatic government to the American people. Busha! Busha! And as you've seen recently, allowing thugs with sticks to roam the streets and intimidate pro-democracy protests, beat up the families with impunity.
And we need a third narrative, where it's welcoming, where Palestinians can feel Palestinian and not wanting to be and hide behind a good Arab. We need to understand that 6-year-old Hind that was murdered by multiple shots by the Israeli army, surrounded by her family members in that car. When she died, we all lost a child. We all did. When 3-year-old Reem was dug out of the rubble, we all lost a child. And when 1-year-old Kfir was kidnapped, and 23-year-old Hirsch was kidnapped, we all have a child in captivity.
At core, Israel's military occupation aims to dehumanize Palestinians. The occupation tries to take away everything that makes life worth living. It demolishes communities, kills family members, uproots people from their homes. It says you are not allowed to have happiness.
Israeli security comes hand in hand with Palestinian liberation. Hand in hand. And after we get to a ceasefire, after we get to a deal, that's when we rally and enter the streets in hundreds, in thousands. Because that's when we need to call for political resolution that brings the two-state solution alive again. Because settler violence, settler terrorism, occupation is a poison that's in all our waters, Israeli and Palestinian alike. Ceasefire, deal, now. From the river to the sea, we all deserve equality. From the river to the sea, we all deserve equality.
This next section is about the far-right mobs in the UK, the role of Twitter in all that, and the anti-fascist reaction. You've probably seen pictures of the fascist violence that occurred in a dozen English cities. There was even a mob attack in Belfast, Northern Ireland. The new Labour government told everyone to stay home and let the police handle it. Luckily, that advice was ignored. In a town called Walthamstow near London, there was a rumor the fascists would attack. Instead, thousands of anti-fascists marched. In Brighton, which is on the southern coast of England, the same thing happened. This is the anti-fascist crowd. Here is the same photo with arrows showing the anti-fascists and the dozen or so fascists behind police lines.
I mean, look, you see this? But what I really like is
Now to the Elon Musk connection. Esteemed Guardian columnist George Monbiot shows that Musk is following white supremacists as he whines that the British government doesn't defend white people. Here, Musk agrees with the idiot comment that Britain is becoming the Soviet Union. Now, Monbiot took a look at who this tweeter, Peter Sweden, was, and found a whole collection of pro-Nazi tweets, like Sweden's claim that Hitler had his good points. And this one that the Holocaust is a lie spread by the New World Order. And look at this Twitter feed that Musk has no problem with publishing. One that spreads the lie that was the spark for the racist and anti-Muslim mobs in Britain. It claims that it was confirmed that the 3 little girls who were killed in an English city of Southport were killed by a Muslim who came on a boat last year. It's a complete lie from end to end. But this post, which was published on July 29th, was still there as of August 9th. It has 17,000 likes and 1.4 million impressions in news feeds. Now, a protest in Mamaroneck, New York, which is a town on Long Island Sound, a protest of the Friends of the IDF Genocide Force, which was holding a fundraiser.
Go slow! How many kids did you kill today? Pays, how many kids did you kill today?
Now, more of my interview with Venezuelan activist Simon Rodriguez.
Basically, in 25 years that Chavismo has been in power, it never took any step to transition away from oil dependency, not even in the face of all of the evidence of the need of humanity to move away from oil. And it's so absurd that they are pursuing a territorial claim which would seem as if even on the rhetoric is a military rhetoric against Guyana, a neighboring smaller and poorer country. Based on the findings of oil, this is an old conflict, but it was renewed and took on new intensity because Guyana is the fastest economy growing in the world because of the new oil findings. So the thirst, the addiction for oil is stronger than ever.
You mentioned Guyana Esquiva. What I don't know how, if I pronounce it.
Yeah,
wrong,
in Spanish and in the Venezuelan tradition, we call this region Guayana Esequiba, and the Guyanese people call it simply Esequibo, which is the name of a river that at one point was the frontier between the Spanish and the Dutch, and after that between the Spanish and the English colonies. And well, eventually, as you know, the English were the most aggressive imperialism. They took over a lot of land that was part of Spain, but U.S. imperialism took advantage of this irredentist Venezuelan claim when there was a leftist leadership in Guyana. And this is an interesting story of itself, but to make it short, as socialists, we reject the possibility of an aggressive war against Guyana, and I think that the current crisis, the political and economic crisis, can, if Maduro stays in power,
I'm
Yeah, I
sorry,
think
it's a real possibility that Venezuela could attack?
they are taking all of the steps and using all of the discourse. In fact, they even held a referendum where they unilaterally annexed the territory. Of course, this is only on the maps. They only changed some lines on the maps, but these are dangerous steps, and they are building up militarily in the border with Guyana.
Wow. All right, so you wrote all this, or the article was published, I think, the day before the election. So the elections take place. What is your reaction?
As I said, as the conditions were fraudulent from the start, nothing different could have been expected. And to make the story short on the claims, from both sides on the electoral result, the government says it got 51% of the votes, having counted 80% of the polling centers, right? But it has not published the detailed result, which is what Venezuelan law requires, and this is the normal thing, and it's how it's always been. And it's why we have an electronic voting system since 2004, so that you can very quickly know how people voted in each state, in each city, in each individual voting center, and even at the specific voting tables. You can see where you personally voted, how was the outcome. They have not published this. In fact, they have not published anything. They only announced this preliminary result, and they have not announced the total result for 100%. And what people are demanding when they say, well, publish the tallies, publish the detailed result, is basically, and in a very succinct way, they are asking for the result to be published. What the government announced is not the announcement of a result. And, Latin America has a very colorful, to say it somehow, story with history with electoral fraud. This is a classic where you are counting the votes, the light goes out, and when the light comes on again, the government won the elections. It was losing before the blackout, and after the blackout, they win. This happened in Mexico with Salinas Gortari. This happened in the Dominican Republic. It happened many places. Now, the equivalent of this is with internet. And since many people don't know how the internet works, it's like kind of a magical thing for many people, then they try to give it some some aura of mystery. But what they are saying is that they were transmitting the data when they got up to 40%, which is what the opposition had with their delegates in the room where they are adding up the votes. When they were counting up to 40%, the internet was caught. They had a hacking attack. They say it was launched from North Macedonia. I don't know why they chose this place. Anyway, then they couldn't keep counting. But somehow they were able to restore this and count by themselves without any opposition delegates up to 80%. And then they announced after midnight this preliminary result. But with only this preliminary result, without a detailed publication of the result, they proclaimed Maduro as the president. And 4 days have gone by and they still do not publish this. Now Maduro went to his controlled Supreme Court and he says he will deliver the results to them. He will not publish them. He will give it to the court for the court to decide if the result is legitimate. But this is not what the law in Venezuela says, and it's not a reasonable thing that if you win, you would not show to the people how you won. So they had this blackout, and then they win. Like it has happened so many times in Latin American history with electoral fraud. It's logical that the people would not accept this, that they would demand to know the result in a detailed way, as it has always been. And taking into account that this government, it reduced the minimum wage from what it was during the Chavez government, which was around $300 a month. It reduced it to barely $3 a month. So it basically
Wait.
established.
Can we emphasize that? Could you say that again? The
Yes,
minimum
this
wage?
is semi-slavery working conditions. People have to understand that the wage system has regressed. We have people that work basically because they get food at the workplace or because they get paid bonuses, which are not considered part of their wage and will not be considered for their retirement or for the payment of other concepts like vacation, etc. But the wage is, the minimum wage is less than $4 a month in Venezuela. So this is barbarous. And of course, this could not have been imposed overnight. This was a slow process of anti-union, anti-worker repression, persecution, destroying the left, attacking the left. And this is how the government achieved this economic counter-revolution, as I would label it. So you have to understand this is the reason why people oppose Maduro, not because Venezuelans are fascist, because Venezuelans love capitalism or whatever. They want to have a living wage. They want what people in other places of the world also want, to live with dignity, to have access to healthcare, to have access to education. And really, because of the crisis, public healthcare has been almost completely destroyed. Public universities have been almost depopulated. Really, it's a disaster. The hyperinflation was so harsh that now the common currency in the streets in Venezuela are US dollars. This was not formally established as an economic policy of the government, but the government simply let it run, as it has happened in Zimbabwe and other places where the national currency is worthless and people have to recur to other ways to go about, buying things and having some sort of functional currency.
That's our program for today. See our program at this time next week. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.